Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this beautiful sunny afternoon in Stonewall. For those who are joining us, welcome to this 2021 financial plan presentation. There are some really great things in it, and some things that we have done to keep the boat afloat. And Council and myself have worked diligently to move things along, even though we are faced with the situations at hand. We've done our best to keep the town going forward, and I certainly hope that you understand the proposal, the financial plan that is put forward, and that we did our due diligence. Any other questions moving forward, or you can always contact us or call the town office to speak with the CAO, and he'd be more than happy to answer your questions. Without further ado, I will turn it over to CAO Wally Melnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome to everyone who's attending. I would like to present the 2021 Town of Stonewall Financial Plan. And we'll go through a number of slides. At the end of it, there will be an opportunity to ask questions for those who are in attendance. And let's get started. So just want to set the table, as it were, in terms of what we have as circumstances with regards to the budget for 2021. One mill raises approximately $300,000. It's just very slightly more than that, but that's a good number for us to use in terms of an approximation. In 2020, December 31st, the CPI or inflation rate was almost zero, very small, negligible amount, of course, caused much by a great deal by the COVID response and the COVID issues that were impacting the economy. We had an assessment increase of approximately 3% based on the growth of the construction in the community. But we did have, as I mentioned, impact of COVID-19 both for last year, and it's continuing to impact us in 2021. These are unprecedented times, obviously, in terms of what's going on with local economy, with local facilities, the ability for people to be able to use those facilities, and people just to be able to circulate in a community. COVID-19 has had an impact on every aspect of the operation. Whether it be our staffing, whether it be works and ops, whether it be our parks and arena or the Heritage and Arts Center administration, everybody has felt the impact, either in terms of increased protocols, lack of activity, increased costs. It's been throughout the entire operation, like it is for most Manitobans. We have seen reduced revenues from user fees, and we continue to face, we believe, the same dilemma for 2021. We know for a fact that the arena has been impacted for the winter and spring season. All revenues were lost for January through till the middle of April, when we would normally shut down for the facility. We're projecting that reduction to be about $225,000 for 2021, which is very similar to what the reduction was for 2020. Council's been cognizant of the impact on businesses and residents alike, and this budget will demonstrate that in terms of what they've tried to accomplish to try and mitigate the impact on businesses and residences. Just a little bit of a comparison here, and we provide this slide pretty much every year when we do our budget, just to indicate kind of where Stonewall generates its revenue and where the provincial average is for municipalities over $5,000, or sorry, over 5,000 people. So the blue line represents municipalities greater than 5,000 in population in Manitoba, and it shows kind of the percentages of various categories of revenue generated in those jurisdictions. So you see the taxation is about 48% or 49%, something like that. Grant in lieu is less than 2%. Grants are a little over or close to 10% on average in municipalities. The blocks indicate the revenue generation in those categories for Stonewall. And Stonewall traditionally has had a great amount of money being generated by user fees and less by taxation. We've been reliant on user fees. Simply that was the philosophy of the council, and it's been how we've generated our revenue. Unfortunately, 2020 and 2021 have required us to relook at that scenario simply because we're not able to generate the revenue from user fees. And you can see 3 blocks that have been identified in red. Those 3 blocks all deal with changes in how or in the percentage that those pieces are now providing towards the total budget. So taxation has gone up, user fees have gone down, and we've looked at other revenue sources such as reserves and surplus transfers in order to be able to try and accomplish the goal of keeping taxation impacts as minimal as possible. The result is that we have some increases. The solid waste special service levy has increased by $14.17 per household. Council had a hearing about that a couple of weeks ago, and ultimately this is based upon our actual costs out the door versus our revenue that we take in, and we are able to then generate a net cost that is responsibility of householders residential in the community. The property tax change, however, Council has been able to do some work on and has been able to decrease the actual taxes being paid by property owners in this community by 0.05%. So half a percentage point reduction in taxation, which is significant for us in terms of what's being done. Oh, sorry, I just touched that a little too quickly. Current rate of relief is not sustainable, however, and there will be a need to return to some prudent tax increases in the future, but we understand that currently there is quite a significant impact on property owners, both in terms of the personal situations, jobs, employment, but also businesses in terms of their ability to generate revenue. And so Council has felt it was important to provide leadership in this area and provide for a reduction in potentially the taxes paid by individual property owners. But that doesn't mean to say that there isn't some benefits in the plan or things being done in the plan. So this isn't just a matter of staying status quo. There is things being done in terms of investments back in the community. Investments including things like investment in an RV campground power upgrade. A couple of years ago, Council did a study with regards to the needs of improving that campground, and the power situation was identified as a key requirement. Council is going to be moving forward with the first phase of that, which will include creating a termination unit in the campground, and then ultimately providing for increased power, more reliable power, and at a higher rate so that ultimately we can do better servicing for the RV campground. We got increased investment in rec and economic development for the community, a new dock at Kinsman Lake, a new wheel loader and fleet trucks for works and ops and P&A operations, parks and arena, installation of 4 level 2 charging stations, upgrade of equipment for fire department, a study at the VMSC. So we're continuing doing capital work or capital studying work on what we can do for great upgrades and how they could work at the VMSC. Again, trying to be prepared as funding opportunities become available. So doing the work well in advance of any potential programs so that we have it on the shelf waiting to go and we can plan for it correctly. And of course, something we've already talked to the community about, which is a town office upgrade project to start this summer to be completed by September of 2022. All capital is being funded by reserves and borrowing, so there is no specific impact on the mill rate this year. It'll be impact on either future years or ultimately has been in past years in terms of reserve allocations. The town will continue with strong support for local agencies and committees. So every year the town gets a request for grants, and we continue to want to provide support for that. The exact makeup has not yet been determined, but the council will be supporting grants for local agencies going forward. Now we'll get into some of the specifics of the budget. So on the general operating fund, on the revenue side, we've budgeted for about $250,000 in added taxes. These are new homes which were built in either 2019 or 2020, and were not occupied or not taxable as of last year's end of year, I guess, or September of last year. So ultimately, those homes will be part of our added taxes for this year. In 2022, we expect to see somewhat of a downturn in added taxes simply because COVID-19 is having somewhat of an impact on construction costs, and ultimately we think that will have a detrimental impact longer term or in the midterm with regards to home construction. Sales of service. So in terms of revenue there, we generate money in an area called general government. This is Admin fees we receive from the fire committee. Town does some administration on behalf of the fire department, and then on behalf of the mobility service in town here, the Stonewall and Area Mobility Service. We also have money in protective for sales services. This is motor vehicle accident claims, so we get to file claims with our insurance if there's a motor vehicle accident in our jurisdiction, either in the town of Stonewall or the arm of Rockwood. AutoPack will cover some of our costs given proper circumstances, and there are conditions to that. Under transportation, we have some revenue there. This is mainly our contract with the province for the cleaning of Main Street. Under environmental health, significant dollars there. Again, we get some money here with regards to our recycling program. So money is received from the Multi-Material Search of Manitoba program and the Waste Reduction and Recycling Support Funding Program as well. We have our new solid waste management levy of $164.22, which again is we've talked about earlier in a previous hearing. And there's new revenue this year because we've taken on administration of a couple of programs or helping in a larger role than we have in the past with the STAR program and the Stonewall and Area Mobility Services program. So these are cost recovery programs. We do have a cost for these on the other side of the budget in the revenue on the expense side, but on the revenue side we show revenues equal to those costs because that's the intent of the program. In terms of recreation and culture, we see potential lost revenue at the VMSC of as much as $170,000. About 60% of that loss has already been recognized with the loss of the season this past winter and spring. So we know that we are going to see significant lost revenues if things continue as they are into the fall. In terms of Quarry Park, we hope the summer will be normal in terms of activity levels, similar to what we saw in 2020. Having said that, we have heard already that there's been some fairly significant and substantial baseball tournaments that have been canceled, national events and provincial events that were scheduled to come here that would have generated revenue for the facility, but also for the community. They have already been canceled. So ultimately, we have seen an impact from the continuation of COVID for 2021. And lost revenue from the actual rental of the Hack facility, the Heritage and Arts Center, of about $55,000. So again, a significant reduction in revenue there, probably as high as 85% of the normal revenue from that facility. Government grants, so we continue to get government grants and probably more subsidization than in previous years. Federal government is giving us money through Canada Day grant, employment programs, and we are getting some money for our e-charging stations in the community. And we'll talk about those a little later in the budget presentation. Provincially, we get our single basket funding, which is on a per capita basis. We get funding from the province to help with our operational costs. We get money for the handy van, Dutch elm disease support, museum and green team monies as well. From the municipality, from Rockwood, we do get VMSC operating dollars, so they give us some money towards the arena. We also get money split with them on our fire department, and they provide us with funding towards the Memorial Park. Other revenue in the miscellaneous column, we get things like our co-op equity compensation. We get rebate from Manitoba Trading Company and Western Financial, which is our insurance company. Both those groups will provide based upon our activity levels, the amount that they're able to generate in terms of revenue. So kind of co-op programs as well, based on municipal partnerships. We're also transferring a significant amount of money from reserves. We've talked about this earlier in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. So we're taking some money from the fire reserve to provide for the upgrading equipment for the fire department. We're doing some money from the cemetery reserve to continue the program there of upgrades and improvements. The arena, we are taking some money there for facility upgrades. We're replacing some steps and a few other things. We also are doing a RecFlex study, as I mentioned earlier. The Parks Reserve, we are taking some money out for some new vehicles that are going to replace the fleet that we currently have, and some upgrades to the parks that need to be done over the course of the summer. Quarry Park Reserve, we're looking at interpretive signage, the customer service termination enclosure that I talked about, the RV campground, which will help to start to fix the power situation we have in the campground, and the new dock. And machinery replacement for works and ops, we're looking at a new loader and snowblower, as well as a vehicle in that fleet as well. So that's the revenue we generate. And where does that money go? You can see from this pie chart that ultimately the vast majority of it is taken up by a couple of departments. Fiscal services, which is more the capital and our fiscal, capital purchases and debt repayments, and the other one is culture and recreation, which again this year we're not able to generate the revenues that we'd like, but we still have expenses there in terms of the operation of those facilities. So what is the breakdown, and what are we doing in the various categories of expenditures for 2021? Well, under general government, which is kind of the operation for the council and the town office and administration, we're seeing some changes in terms of the operation there. Council did take a cost of living decrease as of 2021 in terms of their remuneration. So even though there was a slight increase in the CPI at the end of the year, council determines its remuneration based on, I think it's October 31st CPI, and at that point it was in a negative state, and council approved a reduction in its remuneration for 2021. In addition, we've had some cancellation of events until the fall of 2021. So many of the conferences and workshops that we would normally attend are not being held again this year. Council has budgeted for potential return to some normality in this fall, or for this fall, but ultimately that is still in question. There was a meeting today, and AMM is not committed to its fall conference as of today. General admin basically talks about town office operations, staffing, and ultimately the operation of the office for all of its needs. Legal, we've put some money aside there for the annexation process. We've had to work on an agreement with the RM, and we have other legal issues as well over the course of the year, but we do have some money set aside for the annexation piece. And under unallocated benefits, which is a fairly significant line there as well, we have workman's comp premiums and payroll tax premium, which in listening to the budget from the province a couple of days ago indicates that there is some potential relief there for us coming in the longer term. In terms of other categories, under protective services, we have policing. So we have a strength that we pay for our 4 members. The costs there include overtime and associated adjustments that have been provided to us in terms of anything that we need to consider with regards to that staff allocation. We also pay for 1 full-time admin person to help support that policing, that police staff strength. In terms of fire, this is the full cost of the operation with regards to protective services with regards to the fire department. As I mentioned earlier, the Armor Rockwood is our partner in this operation, and they pay us back 50% on a formula, 50% of the cost. That revenue is showing up on the revenue side, and this is the full cost of the fire department operation. Our emergency measures response group is under our MEC program. Cost there for the code red notification system, which has proven to be fairly valuable in the community in terms of its ability to provide residents with information about ongoing issues or ongoing notifications. Found it to be invaluable with regards to our boil water order that happened earlier or late last year. So again, things like that are important to obviously get to the public as quickly as possible, and the code red notification system has been an excellent tool for us to use. We would encourage people to sign up for the service. We have an allowance for training and volunteer development as part of the emergency measures budget for this year. Again, with COVID-19, we've seen a lot of people not do their normal things in terms of training or attending meetings, and we need to have volunteers that are ready to go in case of an emergency. And so there is an allowance there to ensure that some of the training, whether it's virtual or not, can occur, and make sure the volunteers are ready and prepped if need be. And it's the second year that we continue to fund our local emergency measures on our own. We, in the past, have worked in partnership, but the town has taken over 100%, and it's worked well for us over the course of the last couple of years. In terms of bylaw enforcement, we continue to work with our current provider, and always looking for improvement in terms of better options or other options if we need to. In terms of transportation, not a lot of changes here, pretty much status quo in terms of operation. We are doing a little bit of drainage work at the GenStar development, and we are looking to implement 1 additional crosswalk, solar crosswalk in 2021, with a location to be determined by council over the course of the next month or so. In terms of our environmental health, garbage and recycling, and we've talked about this in the past with our previous hearing. 2021, we signed a new 2-year contract with Gary Olson, who's our provider for the curbside pickup service. We've got a new contract with GL Environmental for our recycling, and we use Waste Connections for the disposal of the remainder of the products that we create, which is the solid waste and the organics. We are contributing or are part of a study looking at solid waste disposal alternatives, a potential waste to energy alternative. So that study is going to take probably another 12 to 18 months before we have any kind of decision there, but we're excited about an alternative that may see us taking something that is a throwaway now and making it something that may be actually beneficial and have a value. In terms of public health and welfare departments, cemetery operation, continuation of the upgrade program as I mentioned earlier. Handy van services, as I mentioned before, we are now providing administrative support for the new Stonewall area mobility service, and the STAR program, we're providing admin support. The program is fully cost recovered, as I mentioned before. Council felt it was important to support this program. We think it's a key part of ensuring that proper or appropriate services are available to the residents of the community that are needed. In terms of environmental, economic, and community development, within that budget, there is the South Interlake Planning District levy. In terms of economic development component, we are looking to hire an EDO later on this year, so an economic development officer that will help us implement a number of key parts of the strategic plan that Council has put forward to the community. It's an exciting time for us in terms of seeing some opportunity and some potential going forward, and we need some support in order to be able to achieve our full potential here. We are looking to pay potentially a spruce grant this year, so that's the Stonewall program for rental unit construction and expansion. We will have an actual application that will have to be paid out this year with the completion of the Renaissance project. So we're excited to pay the grant because that means we ultimately have had some development in order to necessitate that. We have fiber optic rollout that's occurring in the community, and we've put some money aside for that. Again, exciting times for us in terms of being able to provide appropriate level services for our commercial and business community. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 dual e-charging stations that are going to be coming to the community later on this summer. Under recreation and culture, we have money set aside for our recreation facilitator position, which we share with the arm of Rockwood. Lane Wilson has been doing an excellent job in that position, and Council feels that there is a great merit in continuing the partnership to continue to move forward with support for local groups providing recreational services in the community. In the arena, we're looking to replace 1 set of exit stairs. Those stairs have sustained some damage over their lifetime and need to be replaced. There has been an impact on operations, obviously, as we've talked about before. We did do some long needed maintenance and upgrade work on the arena over the course of the past 60 or 90 days while operations were down. We continue to keep staff employed. There has been no decision regarding fall operations in terms of what's going to happen with staff or otherwise. So that'll be determined as we get into the fall and see what the situation is with the COVID-19 response. Parks and Arena, continued management of Dutch elm disease and emerald ash borer. For Quarry Park, we want to do some upgrade and pathways around the lake. They're in a desperate need of some upgrading there, so there'll be some additional material added and hopefully some kind of just enhancement of the pathway so they look more appropriate. And some minor improvements to the ball diamonds, the warning track, and diamonds 3, 4, and 5 is what's currently being budgeted for as part of this year's projects. In terms of physical services, reserves have been used pretty much exclusively to finance most of the capital expenditure plan for 2021. The debt costs remain stable for 2021, although 2021 is the final year of our payment for the VMSC. We are then completed in terms of our payment on that, and that money can then be reallocated to other projects. Town to seek debenture approval for town office upgrade project. We've talked about that, and ultimately Council will be looking to do some work on that in the next couple of meetings. And we've talked about in this budget continued contribution towards the Killens project. The town is committed towards a $500,000 contribution based on a matching situation with the committee that's trying to raise funds for that project. I know they've run into some issues again around the COVID requirement or COVID response and the ability to be able to raise funds, but the town has remained a partner in that project and has kept its commitment in the budget. In terms of capital, again, we'll go just very quickly over what we talked about earlier in the highlights of the budget. We're spending over $1 million on capital upgrades in the community for 2021. Includes firefighting equipment, equipment for works and ops and parks and arena, upgrades in accessibility to the parks, improvements in cemetery upgrades, again, electrical upgrade at the RV campground, a new dock at the Kinsman Lake, a couple of studies, and money for purchase of land involved around our continuing care retirement community or the PCH project. And that is kind of the extent of our presentation regarding the general operating fund. We have a little bit of information to provide also with regards to the utility. So we talked earlier about a small decrease in terms of the overall taxation of individuals in the community for property taxes. The utility operation also has some good news. There's a change in the water rate this year with an 11% decrease on an average consumption bill for 2021. Deficit recovery was completed in 2020, so we've been able to remove the rate rider, and that has resulted in the vast majority of the decrease that's in front of you. So it took us 3 years to wipe out the deficit that had been created kind of little by little over for the decade previous to that. But now that it's been completed, local residents will see some of the benefits of that in terms of decreased water rates for 2020. We have $50,000 in annual lagoon tipping fees. So this is the amount of money we're able to generate from those who use the facility who are not connected to our system. So a reasonable level of income for sure from that group. And we're receiving grant revenue from Manitoba Water Services Board, monies for a lift station, so the upgrade to the South Lift Station, if that project goes ahead this year, as well as Industrial Park Sewer and Water, and that project is moving along at a very good pace. We hope to have some additional information and detail available to the public in the coming days and weeks. In terms of the expenditure side of the utility, we are looking to do a $600,000 water capacity upgrade. So right now our fire flows do not quite meet grade or the minimum requirement or the recommended requirement rather than minimum, the recommended requirement on the east side of town, east of Main Street, and we're looking to do an upgrade, some looping there that would help to fix that problem. As I mentioned earlier, we have some money from Water Services Board to do the South Lift Station, as well as the Industrial Park, and we will continue to put money into reserves with the current rates that are in place. Looking into the future, we are looking for a potential Canada Infrastructure Program approval that would see us build a regional water treatment plant for the community. This would be a reverse osmosis system that would ultimately mean that everyone would have their softener systems replaced in their community with the town water, because it would no longer be required. We're hopeful, but that's a very large project, $20 million plus, and we'll only go forward if we get funding from the province and from the feds as part of it. So just want to indicate a little bit about where we're at in terms of how how the budget is currently looking in terms of the taxation. So here's a 5-year span of taxation for various roll numbers in town. So we took them kind of at random, different sizes of property, different types of property that are residential, and what they've paid for a tax bill from 2017 through to 2021. And you can see that the last couple of years have been very static and similar, very, very consistent and very stable in terms of the taxes being paid by these properties. And the same can be said about commercial. The property on the end there might have had a reassessment done. I'm not sure. Again, we picked these properties by random, so we're not really sure what's happened in that case. But overall, very consistent in terms of the taxes being paid by these properties. So the taxes have been, again, a conscious decision made by council this year to ensure that people can get through the hardships that we face with regards to COVID in the best possible financial position. But having said that, it's only these taxes and comparisons are only as good as how we do compare to other communities like us. And so every year we also run a mill rate comparison to similar sized urban communities around the province. Now this is mill rates, municipal mill rates. So schools would be on top of that in some of these, in all these jurisdictions. And you can see that the town of Stonewall is by far and away the lowest mill rate of any of the communities listed here. So Swan River, Altona, Selkirk, Carmen, Niverville, and Dauphin, our mill rate is significantly lower than any of them. And that's of course translated into the cost of taxes on a $250,000 home. So based upon what we see in this graph, you're looking at probably a couple $100 or more tax savings from being in Stonewall versus the next closest community in terms of their mill rate, and potentially thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars in terms of other communities that are our size and urban in nature. Now, it's not always easy to create a consistent mill rate reduction. Council sometimes faces difficult times, especially in in assessment years or reassessment years. Those are normally in the even years, and so you can see that in 2017 we had a fairly consistent tax mill rate change. 2018, which is an even year, is a reassessment year, and we had kind of a dog's breakfast. 2019, again, back to some sense of fairly calm. There's one small change here, which again could have been a change in assessment based on an appeal or whatever, but ultimately fairly consistent. 2020, a little more variability based upon it being a reassessment year. In 2021, fairly consistent. We're somewhere between 0.8% of an increase down to 0.4% for residential, and commercial is anywhere between just over 0.1%, I guess, and down to 0.17% minus. So very consistent in terms of the increase, and it's very small in terms of council attempting to ensure that people saw as little increase as possible in their taxes. In addition to taxes, though, council also wanted to make sure the community was aware of where we are with our utilities. Those utilities did take a substantial increase again a couple of years ago when we had to match the PSAB accounting piece and make sure that ultimately all of that was addressed in the rates that we were charging, and with the rate rider that we've had to impose on the community for the last number of years, it also elevated our rates. But you can see that for 2021, our water rates are as low as any of the communities, or sorry, as low as any of the communities that ultimately are we compare to. So again, urban centers, you can see here we have rural numbers with their average water bill or our average consumption that they take for a year, and then we took the Stonewall rates, Swan Rivers, Altona, Selkirks, Carmens, Nivervilles, and Dauphins, and again, Stonewall is by far and away the cheapest location in terms of the provision of the water rate. And that's also on the commercial side. Again, our water rates are as low as they are anywhere in terms of an urban center providing them. And that is the extent of our presentation. So thank you very much.